Hi, I'm Benjamin Bernstein with AstroShaman.com, here today to talk about being versus doing, an ancient subject that has been covered by philosophers and spiritual folks for millennia. I just wanted to give you my take on it. I want to particularly put it in the context of a Awakening Plus weekly event I've been doing for several months now, called New Earth Support. And every week, with some minor exceptions, I and a group of folks will come together on Zoom, and we come together with the intention of supporting planet Earth and the Great Awakening that's currently happening. And after we call the directions and set a good sacred container with lots of cool allies, then we just relax and say, okay, how can we help? And then always things start to happen spontaneously. I'm conscious enough in the inner realms that I can tell what's going on. I act as the narrator and things happen. So what has been interesting is the progression over the months we've been doing it. At first, it was more we were doing stuff, like we were actually there floating around the Earth in low Earth orbit, sending energy down and all that kind of thing. But more recently, after perhaps some initial cleanup or heavy energy processing that we might do in the early phases, what's happening lately is we're just kind of being placed in an amazing, blissful space, and we all blend together and we become the field, and we just are. We be. And the message I get about this is that, okay, the best use you all can be, you humans showing up here to support the New Earth evolving, is to simply be present here in, as awakened a state as you can be in. And we always go into embodied awakening before we do this process of actually opening and letting the divine run the show then. My sense is we are generating a field of peacefulness. We are embodying ourselves to the best we can, the new consciousness that the Earth is coming into. And then the allies are taking that energy and sending it down to the Earth. And that's what's happening mostly. So I find myself often commenting, okay, don't get antsy, don't be impatient, don't be antsy that you're not doing something. This is a being service. And I want to correlate this to a couple of other teachings that I am familiar with. One is the Law of One, which is free at lawofone.info if you want to check it out. This was channeled some 35 years ago by three folks, and this being called Ra, they were channeling it through and getting all sorts of amazing information. In my experience, Law of One is probably the best description of life, the universe, and everything I've ever encountered. What's it all about? What are we here for? All that kind of deeper questions. Ra is the being who's being channeled. Ra says, it's all about just being awake as you can be and being in a physical body. And there are huge numbers of us humans here that the Law of One would refer to as wanderers. In other words, we're not native to Earth. We came from other dimensions, other planets, other timelines. And because Earth is in such a crisis right now, and this evolutionary movement wants to happen, and a lot of people are kind of stuck and not getting with the program, a huge numbers of beings have come from off planet and off dimension, you might say, in order to help out. So that's the idea. And again, according to this teaching, the fundamental service is just to be, and be in the state of service to other consciousness, which is sort of a form of awakening, I guess, and just be there. And a single person who, in my opinion, a single person who's awakened, even if they just sit in a room or a cave and never interact with anyone else, they are serving, because the presence of an awakened being on the planet spreads love and light around. This was demonstrated scientifically back in the 70s. The Transcendental Meditation people did projects where they would bring in several thousand meditators and book out several hotels, and these folks would be meditating in shifts 24/7 and like go for 3 days, for example, and they kept close watch on the crime statistics, and like as soon as that meditation started, the crime rate dropped 30%. And then as soon as they stopped, it went back up. So, there have been experiments done showing that holding out an awakened, peaceful consciousness does affect the collective. Terms for this are like morphic resonance, the butterfly effect, 100th monkey. Those are, if you don't already know those concepts, you can Google those and learn more about the idea. So anyhow, this is a being state. I want to correlate it to another book I recently read. Let me get the author's names. This book is so wonderful, and I can't recommend it highly enough. It's The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, A New Paradigm for Sustainable Success. 3 authors, Jim Dethmer, Diana Chapman, and Kaylee Klemp. And the title, I mean, the book is written, it appears to be written for executives, people who are running companies, things like that. But I found it mostly helpful in my personal life because there's some very awakened concepts here. Although they're applied to business here, what I've had a great time doing is integrating them into my personal life. And the theme they bring in is 4 levels of being, which relates to my theme of being versus doing. And their first level that they describe is to me. The to me consciousness says something happened. I'm the victim. I got hurt by this. I'm going to blame outward and say, why did they do that to me? Okay. So that's level 1. Level 2 is by me. And that doesn't mean you're purchasing me. It means BY me. And that means, okay, now I've taken a step up from that other level. I'm an agent. I'm taking conscious action. I'm making things happen, but I'm still perceiving myself as a separate being, but I am making things happen. Things are happening by me. Third level is a more awakened one, a partial awakening. And this is the through me. Through me says, I am aware of the divine flow. I'm aware that I'm receiving inner guidance, and I am making a conscious choice to open to that guidance and follow it. So things are happening, but it's in flow state, it's in the zone, and it's really not like my ego is making decisions about what to do. It's more like I am being guided and I am voluntarily submitting to the guidance, and things are happening through me. And it's a very magical state. Most everyone has been in flow state at some point or another. But the ultimate highest level they describe is as me. And in this state, you have merged completely with divinity. You don't perceive any difference between you and it. And the acting is done not from the perspective of a separate ego, but as the divine in the human, but there's no perceptible difference between them. So we all operate at different levels, sometimes at different times. As I've worked more into the as me level, I still use through me language. For example, when I lead my Awakening Plus calls, my typical phrasing is, oh, they're suggesting we do this, or they're telling me, and I'll speak as if a separate Benjamin is hearing guidance from external beings. But it's really more like I am those beings, and it's all one thing. And however, my ego is not comfortable speaking as the divine in these contexts because I'm concerned that will come off as arrogant. Oh, who does he think he is? What does he think he is, Jesus Christ or something like that? And therefore, the comfort level of my ego right now is to speak in a through me version, even when I'm in an as me state. So I share all this to offer for you reflection. Which level are you working from? Is it a to me level? You're the victim, things are being done to. Or is it the by me level where you're taking action and you're making things happen, but still perceiving it separate? Is it the through me level where you've gained some access to the inner guidance and you, the separate self, are choosing to follow those guidances? Or are you in the as me level where it's all one thing and you just can't tell the difference between you and the divine? I went into a state a while back where I said for a while, I can't tell where Benjamin ends and the divine starts, or vice versa. And as I feel it right now, that's still true. And again, as always, please understand when I'm talking about these states, this is not arrogance, it's not bragging, I'm not special. If you knew how dense I was and how divinely unconscious I was some 15, 20 years ago when I finally started doing practices that finally blasted me open to these inner awarenesses, I mean, there was no one more thick as a brick than me. I was the remedial student in the class. I offer these ideas and these testimonials, if you will, in the hope that you might be encouraged by them and know that if someone like Benjamin, who, just worked for decades to try to have any kind of spark of awakening and just nothing for so long until I started working with plant spirit teachers. And that's what finally cracked me open. Each of us will have our own way of accessing it. Some people use tools like that, some don't need them. But, if I can get there to the level I have, then you can too. I'll just promise you this, if you're inspired, if you want to go into that blended space and experience the oneness more and more, then there are so many opportunities blossoming all over the place. I've got my Awakening Plus events. Anyone who subscribes to my newsletter We'll be informed of free events that anyone can attend, even if you're not a member of Awakening Plus. And of course, members get access to the archive and other benefits. But a lot of events are out there for free because I'm here to spread the light and the love and to help this awakening along in my own small way, me and hundreds of millions of others. It's a big team. So I only give this to you in the hopes that it might be of some help, maybe stimulate something in there somewhere. Let me add one current level that sort of ties into what I'm talking about. Right now, we have the coronavirus. And what it's made really starkly clear is which parts of the world have privilege and which do not, which have good healthcare systems and which don't, which have people who are packed together so tightly they can't physically distance, and those who cannot. And so it's really shined a very stark light on the inequalities of the world. And also, it's made us realize, wow, if there's any people out there who've got the coronavirus, it can start spreading back around again. There is no safe place. And it encouraged us to think, wow, in this sense, we're all one. We are a collective humanity. And I think Jesus said something like, what you do to the least of these, you do to me. And in this context, I'm thinking, wow, what we do to the least of humanity, what we might consider the least. I mean, we're all equal and we're all divine as far as I'm concerned. But if there's a group that's being treated poorly and they don't have sanitary conditions and they got coronavirus spreading around, it's pretty darn likely that that's going to start spreading out into the populace again. So to me, the whole pandemic situation is an encouragement to really treat everyone well, be kind, compassionate, help folks out. Don't just get all selfish and I just want my thing and I'm not worried about you kind of consciousness. There's a teaching in the Law of One where they talk about one way to graduate humanity, which most people take, is to be enough service to other that you do it. You have to be a little more concerned with other people than yourself, genuinely at the core. And if you get to the end of a lifetime and you've been genuinely more concerned about other people than yourself, then you can graduate and move on to the next thing, which is even more amazing than being a human. In this teaching, there are 7 levels that you work through in a universe, and this human's just level 3, and it's the quickest of all the levels. So, after you graduate human, there's actually billions more years of evolution in these increasingly luminescent and ecstatic light bodies before you finally move on to whatever's next. And apparently there's an infinite number of universes coming and an infinite number that have already been. When you're dealing with the divine, there's no limit to it of any kind. So I'm wandering a bit, but let me now just bring back to my point. So there's doing and there's being. As Frank Sinatra said, I think he balanced it really well because he's saying, doobie doobie doo. So I will ask you to notice in your life, where am I doing, taking action? Am I taking action as a separate being? Am I taking action as a being who's being inspired but still separate? Am I taking action in a unified state where there's no conscious difference between you and the divinity that's moving the body in space? And are you taking time to be? We can't just do all the time. We'll burn out. We have to take some time to meditate, rest, be in nature, whatever you do to just go yin and recharge. So I could go on a whole tangent on that, but that's probably beyond the scope. So anyhow, I hope this video has been helpful. I know I've wandered a bit here and there, but I hope it coheres well enough around that theme of doing versus being that it makes some kind of sense and is helpful to you in some way. I'd love your feedback. Please post comments if you have any thoughts around what I've said. And my website is astroshaman.com, ASTROSHA, M as in mother, A, N as in Nancy.com. And I offer private sessions with astrology, shamanic healing, awakening activation, life coaching. And as I mentioned, I have this Awakening Plus program that you can participate in a lot of events for free, and members can go into the archive and dive deep into the riches that have been accumulated for years in there. Anyhow, I'm complete. Thank you for watching. So grateful that you're with me. Many blessings to you.